In a case that is already setting the internet ablaze, Clifford Harris, better known as T.I., was reportedly handed down an unprecedented music sentence yesterday. A ruling that has shocked and divided the hip-hop world. Since the announcement, reactions from rappers have been flooding social media and the press, ranging from disbelief and criticism to strongly opinionated takes. In December 2021, a clip went viral across every corner of the internet. It was not new footage. It was not a leak. It was T.I. on his own podcast, in his own words describing the moment he pinned a gun case on his dead cousin. The clip had originally aired in August 2020 on his Expediously Music podcast, but it had somehow flown under the radar until it didn't. The internet reacted the way the internet always does. When a rapper gets caught saying something that contradicts everything they've ever stood for, the internet was not the problem for T.I. The problem was what happened next. When actual rappers, people he had collaborated with, broken bread with, and shared stages with, started reacting, Bowie Badaz was the first domino. The Baton Rouge rapper caught wind of the resurfaced clip and called T.I. a rat during an interview with Vlad TV. He did not stop there. He went further and pulled the plug on their upcoming joint album. A joint album, something that had been planned, discussed publicly, and music anticipated by both fan bases. Bowie threw it in the garbage without a second thought. For a man like Bowie, who had beaten a murder charge and sat on death row in Louisiana, the code was everything, and in his eyes, T.I. had broken it. And then came 50 Cent. Curtis Jackson has never needed much of an invitation to insert himself into controversy, music, and this was no exception. 50 Cent took the comedic approach and posted a hilarious video mocking the back and forth between Ty and Bowie. He dug up an old Gunit record from 2008, a track that already contained bars aimed at T.I.'s suspiciously light federal sentence. The lyrics were pointed. They questioned music, the math. They asked how a man gets caught with machine guns and walks away in 12 months. And 50 Cent played them on loop for the entire internet to hear. But this did not start in 2022, and it did not start in 2020. To understand why so many people in rap turned on T.I., why this moment felt less like a controversy and more like a sentencing, you have to go back to the beginning. Clifford Joseph Harris Jr. Tick grew up in the Bankhead neighborhood of Atlanta, Georgia. It was a place known for its poverty, its violence, and its proximity to the drug trade that fueled much of the city's underground economy. Ty entered that world early. In 1998, he was arrested and convicted in Georgia for distribution of cocaine, manufacturing, and distributing a controlled substance, and giving authorities a false name. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison and was released after serving 1 year. That conviction would follow him. Under federal law, it made him a convicted felon, and that status meant he could no longer legally possess firearms. This detail matters. It matters because of what happened 9 years later. By 2007, T.I. was not just a rapper from Bankhead. He was one of the biggest names in music. He had platinum albums, chart-topping singles, a record label called Grand Hustle, and a persona built on being the hardest man from the hardest part of Atlanta. He called himself the King of the South, and for a time, not many argued. He had earned it. His music reflected where he came from: the traps, the hustles, music, the gunplay, the consequences, and the streets respected him for it. Then, in October 2007, hours before he was set to perform at the BET Hip Hop Awards, federal agents arrested T.I. on weapons charges. Authorities said he gave his bodyguard $12,000 to buy and deliver 3 machine guns and 2 silencers to him. He was not allowed to own them because he is a convicted felon. The charges were federal. The weapons were not handguns. They were automatic weapons with silencers. The bodyguard who purchased them turned out to be a cooperating witness working with the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives. Ty was arrested in October 2007 on firearms charges when he allegedly tried to purchase guns from a cooperating witness. This was not a minor charge. A felon in possession of a firearm carries serious federal time. The weapons music involved machine guns and silencers, pushing the stakes higher. People around hip-hop expected T.I. to go away for a long time. The federal system does not play. There is no parole in the federal system. You serve at least 85% of whatever sentence you receive, music, and the sentencing guidelines for what T.I. was charged with pointed to a decade or more behind bars. What happened next is where the entire narrative begins to crack. In March 2009, I was sentenced to a year and a day in prison in a plea deal in relation to the weapons charges. A year and a day for 3 machine guns and 2 silencers purchased illegally by a convicted felon through a government informant. The sentence shocked the hip-hop world. It shocked legal analysts. It shocked anyone who had ever seen a federal weapons case resolved in a courtroom. People began asking a very simple question. How? How does a convicted felon caught red-handed trying to acquire military-grade weapons walk away with 12 months and change? The answer, according to T.I., was that he had a great legal team and that the judge was fair. He pointed to his community service. He pointed to his willingness to cooperate with the court's music conditions. He pointed to a deal that included 11 months of home confinement, a $100,000 fine, and 1,500 hours of community service. He presented himself as a cautionary tale, someone who had made mistakes and was using his platform to help others avoid the same path. But the streets were not buying it, not everyone anyway. The whispers started almost immediately. In the world of hip-hop, the math has to add up. When someone faces serious federal charges and walks away with a fraction of the expected sentence, the assumption, right or wrong, is that somebody talked, somebody gave information, somebody became useful to the government. And in a culture where the worst thing you can be called is a snitch, those whispers carried weight. Then came the Crime Stoppers commercial. As part of his sentence conditions, Music T, I appeared in a public service announcement for Crime Stoppers in Atlanta, urging residents to call in with tips on unsolved crimes. For a rapper whose entire brand was rooted in street loyalty, standing in front of a camera and telling people to call the police was, to many, an unforgivable act. It did not matter that it was a condition of his sentence. It did not matter that he was trying to fulfill his obligations to the court. Music, what mattered was what it looked like. And what it looked like was a man who had switched sides. The Crime Stoppers video became a recurring weapon. Every time T.I. got into a public disagreement with another rapper, every time he tried to assert his credibility, every time he invoked the streets, someone would pull up that footage. It became the thing that would not go away. It became the stain that no amount of platinum plaques could remove. But Thai Music continued to perform, and continued to release music and continued to build his brand. He and his wife, Tiny Harris, became reality TV fixtures. They Music launched businesses. They raised a large family in the public eye. For a while, it seemed like the noise around his legal history had settled. Music. People moved on. New controversies in hip-hop emerged. New figures dominated the conversation around snitching. Tekashi's 690 name, Music, most prominently made T.I.'s situation seem quaint by comparison. And then, Music in 2020, T.I. opened his mouth on his own podcast. The moment that obliterated whatever fragile peace T.I. had brokered with Music, the hip-hop community came from his own lips, in his own studio, on his own show. During an episode of the Expediously podcast, Music, T, I told a story about his youth, about a time when he and his late cousin, or a man he called Toot, were caught up in a gun case together. Ty recounted how his lawyer told him the charges could disappear if the gun were attributed to Toot, Music, and Toot, who was still alive at the time of the original incident but had since passed away, allegedly told T to do exactly that. T recalled the conversation in Music's vivid detail. He described his lawyer saying he could make everything go away if the weapon was attributed to his cousin. He described Tut giving him permission enthusiastically even to take that route. T framed it as a mutual decision, music, a family agreement, a moment of love between cousins. He said it was the only time he ever gave information to anyone. Music. When the clip resurfaced in December 2022, the internet did not see love between cousins. My Music. The internet saw a man who had admitted on camera to blaming a dead relative for his own crime. The nuanced T I had tried to embed in the story was that Tut had consented to Music, and that Tut had passed away before the legal proceedings concluded that the case was ultimately suppressed on procedural grounds. None of that mattered. The headline wrote itself. Ty snitched on his dead cousin. Bowie Badaz, as mentioned, was the most vocal critic. His reaction was not measured, it was not diplomatic, it was raw, and it was absolute. Bowie called Ty a rat and severed their professional relationship in one fell swoop. The interpretation positing that T, Music, put the blame on his cousin to dodge a weapons charge was enough to shove a would-be collab album between Music, the two. For Bowie, this was not a grey area. That he had faced a murder charge in Louisiana. He, Music, had sat on death row. He had beaten the case without cooperating. He had earned in his mind the Music right to pass judgment on anyone who had taken a different path, and his judgment on T was that Ty was finished. Ty responded by going on Trap News Network and trying to explain himself. He expressed frustration over Bowie not having reached out to him directly about the disagreement, saying this baffled him. He said the story had been embellished, that he had exaggerated elements of the podcast conversation for dramatic effect. He explained how he had embellished the story in the music question as part of a larger discussion. He called the situation a kerfuffle, but the damage had been done, e.g. Music. The word embellishment was not enough to undo a confession that millions had heard with their own ears. Ty then went a step further and unearthed court documents from the 2003 Music Fulton County case and shared a photo of them on his Instagram stories. The documents, according to TI, showed that the evidence in the case Music had been suppressed due to an illegal stop. The evidence discovered during the illegal stop, arrest, search, seizure, and interrogation was Music suppressed and could not be used against him. In other words, T.I. was arguing that he never needed to snitch because the case was thrown out on its own merits. He captioned the post with a challenge, Music daring anyone who doubted him to pull up their own paperwork. But the hip-hop community remained divided. A number of tipsy hip-hop peers chimed in on the situation and Music either defended or poked fun at him. New York rapper My Sonin supported Ty and claimed he wasn't in the wrong for his decision, Music regardless of street rules. Those who defended him argued that what T described was not snitching in the traditional Music sense. He had not testified against anyone, had not worn a wire, had not walked Music into a federal building, and had not given information that led to someone's arrest. His cousin was already dead. No one went to jail because of what T.I. said, but the other camp, and it was the louder camp, pointed to the pattern. They pointed to the 2007 weapons case and the impossibly light sentence. They pointed to the Crime Stoppers commercial. They pointed to the podcast Admission. They pointed to the fact that he was not allowed to own firearms because he is a convicted felon, Music. And yet he tried to buy 3 machine guns and got what amounted to a slap on the wrist. They pointed to Whack 100, Blueface's manager, who accused Tip of cooperating with authorities for a lighter sentence. The circumstantial evidence in the court of hip-hop opinion was overwhelming. 50 Cent, ever the provocator, used the entire situation as content. Music. When the Bowie T.I. feud erupted, 50 went to Instagram and posted a music-edited video that turned the whole thing into comedy. He played his old Gunit records. He referenced the math: 10 machine guns, 12 months. The numbers did not make sense to him, Music, and he made sure the entire internet knew it. Ty fired back in the comments, claiming he had never helped authorities convict anyone of any crime. But 50 Cent was not interested in a debate. He was interested in spectacle, and the spectacle was working. What made the situation even more combustible was the backdrop against which it was playing out. In hip-hop, snitching had become perhaps the single most discussed ethical question of the era. Tekashi 619 had cooperated with the federal government and was released in 2020 after agreeing to testify during the trial of 9 Trey gang members. His decision to testify had effectively ended his career in the eyes of the street, even as it generated massive public attention. The YSL RICO case in Atlanta had also thrust the issue into the spotlight, with Gunna accepting a plea deal that many in the community interpreted as cooperation, despite his insistence otherwise. Ngunona has made news since accepting a plea deal in the YSL RICO case and was forced to shun a number of his hip-hop friends due to snitching charges. In this environment, Music, the tolerance for perceived snitching was at an all-time low. And T.I., who had been skating on the edge of these accusations for over a decade, finally fell off. The snitching allegations were not even the only fires burning around Ty's reputation during this period. He and Tiny were facing deeply troubling accusations on a completely different front. A woman claims the famous couple drugged her after they met in the VIP section of a club. The new case was filed under California's Sexual Abuse and Cover-Up Accountability Act, which created a 4-year window through 2026 for alleged victims to bring cases that would otherwise be barred by the statute of limitations. Ty and Tiny denied the allegations. Music. Their legal team pushed back aggressively, and ultimately a judge dismissed the sexual assault lawsuit filed against Music Ty and his wife, Tiny Harris. After the pair's Jane Doe accuser failed to respond to the couple's motion to dismiss the case in a timely manner. There was also the defamation lawsuit brought by Sabrina Peterson, an Instagram influencer who sued the couple in March 2021, saying they harmed her reputation in business when they denied her allegations that Ty once put a gun to her head. That case was also resolved in T.I.'s favour, with 5 of the 7 causes of action in Peterson's original lawsuit found to be frivolous. Person was ordered to pay more than $96,000 in attorney's fees and later testified that she could not afford to cover the bill. So T.I. was winning in court. So he was beating lawsuits left and right. He and Tiny even scored a massive $71 million jury award after winning at their 3rd court trial, involving claims that MGA Entertainment violated the intellectual property rights of the couple's teen pop group OMG Girls. Jurors awarded the couple $17.9 million in compensatory damages and a whopping $53.6 million in punitive damages following a 3-week trial. That was a real tangible headline-making victory, Ty himself said after the verdict that he believed justice was served. But none of those legal wins could repair what the streets had already decided in hip-hop. Perception is everything. You can have the paperwork to prove your innocence. You can have court documents, dismissals, jury verdicts, and depositions, music, stacked to the ceiling. None of it matters if the culture has already passed judgment, and the culture had passed judgment on T.I. The irony of T.I.'s situation is music, that the very thing he built his career on, his authenticity, his connection to the streets, his willingness to be vulnerable about his criminal music history, became the instrument of his undoing. He did not get caught by a journalist or an investigator. He did not get exposed by leaked documents, music, or a cooperating witness. He exposed himself. He sat in front of a microphone on his own podcast and told a story that he believed demonstrated his loyalty to his family. Music. And the world heard something else entirely. Meanwhile, The man who had been loudest in condemning Thai, Bui Badaz, found himself navigating his own complicated legal journey. Si Bui was first charged in June 2023 with being a felon in possession of a firearm after authorities spotted the rapper with a handgun tucked into his waistband in an Instagram video. The case was dismissed, then refiled. Bui fought it. He appealed to the public. He even asked President Trump for music a pardon. And in the end, Bui accepted a plea deal, telling fans he was tired of fighting. He was ultimately sentenced Music to no additional prison time, 3 years of supervised release, and 300 hours of community service. The contrast between the two situations was not lost on observers. Bui accepted a plea music deal, the same type of legal maneuver that T.I. had been criticised for, but no one called Bui a snitch for it. No one Music questioned whether he had cooperated. The difference in the eyes of the hip-hop community was Music that Bui's deal was transparent, his charges were straightforward, and he had never appeared in a Crime Stoppers video or told a story about blaming a dead family member. The standards, fair or not, were different. And that brings us to where T.I. sits now. He announced his retirement from performing, revealing that his last paid gig would be at the 96.1 The Beats Jingle Ball holiday concert in Atlanta. He has spoken openly about wanting to step away from the grind of touring in live shows. He has also dealt with a $2 million tax lien that emerged Music amid his major court victory against MGA Entertainment. His financial picture, like his reputation, is complicated. T.I. has also hinted at a final album, reportedly titled Kill the King, a title that seems to acknowledge the end of the persona he spent 2 decades music building. The King of the South is looking to dethrone himself. Whether that is an act of self-awareness or an acceptance of what the hip-hop community already decided, Music, it is a significant moment for one of the genre's most consequential figures. So, was this really a death sentence? In the literal sense, no. T is not behind bars. He is not on death row. He is not facing execution. But in hip-hop, there are things worse Music than prison. There is being called a snitch by the people you grew up idolizing. There is watching your former collaborators refuse to share a stage with you. There is hearing your name mentioned alongside Tekashi 6, I Makes 9 in conversations about cooperation. There is the knowledge that no matter how many lawsuits you win, no matter how much money you make, no matter how many court documents you post on Instagram, the tag will follow you for the rest of your career. T.I. said it himself on Instagram Live. I never gave no information to get anybody in no trouble. No time with no police. Music. He has been consistent in that claim. He has offered to show his paperwork to anyone willing to look. Music. He has challenged his accusers to produce evidence, and no one has produced a document with T.Y.'s name on it, testifying against another person leading to someone's conviction. But that is the cruelty of the court of public opinion in hip-hop. It does not require evidence. It does not require proof. It requires only suspicion repeated enough times from enough credible voices to become indistinguishable from fact. The machine guns, the 12 months, the Crime Stoppers ad, the dead Music cousin. Each piece is circumstantial on its own. Together they formed a narrative that T has been unable to escape. What the rappers who reacted to T were really reacting to was not a single incident. Music. It was the accumulation. It was the feeling that something about T's story had never quite added up. And when he provided the missing piece himself on that podcast episode, everything crystallized. Basusi's reaction was not just about the cousin's story. It was about every question that had gone unanswered since 2007. 50 Cent's trolling was not just about humor. It was about a rivalry that had simmered for years, finally given fresh ammunition. The social media backlash was not just about one music clip. It was about a community that holds loyalty above almost every other value, confronting a figure who appeared to have failed that test in the most public way possible. Whether T.I. is truly guilty of what he has been accused of, whether he cooperated with the federal government, whether he gave information that harmed another person, remains in the strictest sense unproven. His paperwork, the documents he shared, supports his version of events. No cooperating agreement has surfaced. No testimony has been entered into evidence. The legal record as it, music, stands does not confirm the accusation. But in the world, T.I. chose to inhabit music in the culture he helped build in the streets he claimed to represent. The legal record was never the final word. What the final word belongs to the people, and the people have spoken. The rappers have spoken, the collaborators have walked away, the joint albums have been cancelled, the memes have been made, the jokes have been told, the sentence has been delivered. And for Ty, the King of the South, the verdict from his peers may be the one that stings the music most. Not because it is fair, but because it is permanent. And,